expecting was over 70%. The number of teachers that were coming as compared to the number we were expecting was over 70%. There is one or two provinces where it is still depressed, but generally we are over 70%. So those who are supposed not to have enough money and whatever, we are hoping by the end of this week they will have borrowed enough money to go back to work.
chokwadi pasi pano taiona moto marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudisi vamwe tioneswe moto dai pasina kupindira kwaishe chokwadi pasi pano taiona moto marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudisi vamwe tioneswe moto dai pasina kupindira kwaishe kana dzimba dzedu dzingadai dziri dzavo mawanzira vanoita dzimba dzavo vanoda kudisi vamwe tigare mumiti dzimba 10 pamunhu mumwe chete vanoda kudisi vamwe tigare mumiti dzimba 10 pamunhu mumwe chete vanoda kudisi vamwe.
Welcome to this edition of The Situation Right Now with me, your host, Dara Blessed Mhlanga. Now this afternoon we are in partnership with the Roger Federal Foundation and ZANU-PF. Now we are talking about the School Readiness Initiative in Zimbabwe. Education, very important. The key to success, they say. What are we doing in Zimbabwe that we prepare our children to move in this path so that nobody is left behind, even those the poor in the rural areas? The young ones, they say that mold the young in the way they should grow. And ZANU-PF looks at the ECD component of learning. Is our country prepared? Are our students ready, equipped when they step into that class? Are they getting the best? Now, we are going to be discussing this on The Situation Right Now with me, your host, Dara Blessed Mhlanga, and members of the civic society who work around these issues of education and how we can improve it in this country. Now, I'm just going to start with the ZANU-PF. I'm going to start with you from ZANU-PF. Just probably introduce yourself and tell us what ZANU-PF does. Just introduce the organization as well so that our viewers have an understanding.
Okay, thank you very much, Blessed. My name is Tandanya Majiwa, and I'm with the Zimbabwe Network of Early Childhood Development Actors. We are a network of civil society organizations, individuals and institutions that are working towards improving early childhood development in Zimbabwe. So you could ask what early childhood development is. It is the period from conception up until 8 years, and we speak about policy, we speak about capacity building of individuals and actors that are working within that framework. You may ask what early childhood development is. It is the period from conception up until 8 years. A period where we speak about the holistic development of the child. So within this context, we are specifically talking about education and how then we prepare the child for school, for formal learning. That's why we are joined by our friends today to discuss early childhood development education.
Amazing. I'll come to you, Snikiwe Mako, and let's talk about ChemFed. Briefly about yourself and ChemFed before we start going into the meat of the issues.
Thank you very much. My name is Nikiwe Makowe, head of programs for ChemFed Zimbabwe. So ChemFed, we specialize, actually we support girls. We do girl child education where we look at girls from underprivileged communities, those who are coming from marginalized girls from marginalized communities. We support them to be able to access school, not only for them to access, but for them to be able to stay in school and complete with exit skills which can prepare them to be able to tackle life after school and to be able to fit into communities. We believe that support to the marginalized within schools is key in terms of breaking the cycle of poverty. And we know that from time immemorial, girls have been disadvantaged in many facets of life. So we believe in making education a right to each and every child. We want the children to be able to be respected, to be valued, and for them to be able to grow up and turn the tide of poverty. So that's our focus as an organization, where we want to ensure that education becomes key in terms of preparing girls from marginalized communities to become leaders in their own right and be able to really achieve what they are set out to achieve, so that they've got a voice within all spaces and facets of life. So that is why we are here with ZANU-PF, because when we are looking at ECD, yes, we support girls in secondary education through to university and with other out-of-school activities that is aimed at really empowering the girls. So we believe that ECD is the foundation of education, and we cannot be able to achieve our mission and vision if we don't go back to the roots and ensure that learning is taking place at preparatory stages, which is ECD. That is why we are there, because we believe that we can be able to support a girl in secondary once they have got a firmer foundation in ECD, because that's where school began.
Yes. Amazing. We will look into those statements and get a fuller briefing about it. But Tatenda, let me come to you as well. Your organization and what you do before we get into the meat of things.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dara. My name is Tatenda Munetsi, Technical Officer for Municipal Development Partnership, which is an organization that focuses more on the local governance of rural district councils and also urban councils. But on this project, we are focusing more on the RDC side. Our main goal, especially on this project, is just to enhance the capacity of RDCs, which are rural district councils, to make sure that they prioritize ECD education, early childhood development, especially taking into account that about 75 to almost 80% of rural schools are owned by RDCs. So we are mainly into the decentralization of main functions of councils, both RDCs and urban councils. But on this project, School Readiness Initiative, we are focusing mainly on the rural side. Thank you.
Amazing, Natalie. I'll come to you. Just let us talk about your organization and why ECD.
Okay. We are Child Protection Society. I'm Natalie Simbini. I'm head of programs. Child Protection Society, it's a national organization. We focus on education, which is the primary reason why we're here today. We also have child protection programs as well as health and youth programs. Focusing on ECD, our main thrust is on P3 schools, that is the most vulnerable schools, targeting, as we're talking about, the foundational kids, the ECD children. That is mostly ECDB. Are they ready to transition into grade 1? So the various things that we're going to talk about, I suppose, within the School Readiness Initiative is the activities that we're doing to make sure that children are ready when they do transition into grade 1 and can then take on the lessons that go forward as they are now progressing in primary school.
Yeah. Now, I want to come to you and from Zinekda and say, can you just give us a brief overview of the state of ECD learning in Zimbabwe? Just a helicopter view, you know. Let's fly us past. What is the state? Are you satisfied with it?
The status of ECD, it's a conversation on its own, and it really excites me to think of the path that we have traveled since it was formalized in Zimbabwe in 2004. And from my perspective, I think I can applaud the work that the Minister of Primary and Secondary Education has done together with CSOs to be where we are today, to have ECD, A and B as part of basic education is provided for in our Education Amendment Act, and also how they've gone to say that we need to prioritize ECD if we are going to address the early learning needs of children in Zimbabwe and be able to get to a point where we know our children are learning. So the situation has progressed well. We can talk of learner-pupil ratio, which by world standard is supposed to be 1:20 for ECDP children, which is our main focus for this project. But from our statistics within the country, our MEs, our ZIM stats, we will see that at most it's 1:60, 1:70, and at worst in rural areas it's 1:80, which is something that we are advocating to say we need to see prioritizing of deployment of teachers for ECD, something that the ministry has done well in the recent past, where they've deployed teachers and prioritized the number of teachers that are sent to schools. So I see a progressive move towards being aware of the importance of early childhood development in addressing education challenges and also learning issues with children. So you will see that even in discourse to do with key decision makers, which is a key result area that ZANU-PF has been working towards in order to have dialogue with members of parliament, to have dialogue with our decision makers like the ministers, to get to listen to us, to say when you're doing national budgets, like the process in which we are as a country, do we have specific provisions for ECD? When we are looking at our tax regime, do we have earmarked resources for early childhood development? Those are some of the discussions that we are having with them. But you see that there is a progressive shift towards prioritizing ECD, and we are making headway in terms of indicators like I was referring to, the learner-teacher-pupil ratio, the qualified teacher. You'd notice that because ECD is and still even globally, you notice it's a new trend, it's a new discussion where we are seeing even teachers. Previously, we used to have community volunteers that were holding the post of teacher. But now there are discussions to see with how important ECD is. We need professional people who are specifically trained in ECD. So you see that within our statistics, we have been seeing a shift towards, now we're going towards 59% of qualified teachers within Zimbabwe. So it's a good progress from what I see.
I just want us to look at infrastructure, because I think it's very important at that particular time. Now, from my understanding, when ECD was started in Zimbabwe, the government schools did not have infrastructure for ECD. Has that been rectified?
This is an important kind of discussion where my partners can come in, because they are at that level where they are working with schools directly implementing that intervention strategy within the Roger Federal funded project. So I think my partners can answer that one.
I'll just come to you from Kemfed. I know Kemfed because in Kwekwe, a Fitchley primary school, there's a Kemfed office inside Fitchley, so you are on the ground.
Yeah. What I can say, what we can say is Comfort is, to her point, we are seeing that there's progression and there is positivity in ensuring that there is infrastructure for ECD within schools. We know that before, ECD was considered as play, and yes, the schools is still play, but now you see that we are looking at structured play, not just play where children are considered as just playing, but we need to look at it as structured play, which brings out learning as the children are playing. So for it to really bring out learning, it must be formalized. So when I said it was looked at before as play, you find that ECD children would be somewhere, not within the school premises. It can be within the school premises, but there would be probably a shelter, form of a shelter, somewhere within the school where they would be playing there, and you would find that really would school administrators go to really supervise the play. But the move in the shift that she was talking about is ministry then said ECD children should be housed within the school, the same blocks as the other learners within a primary setting. So now you can go to a school and you get into an ECDB class and you get to a grade 1 class, and there is a deliberate effort to make sure that within that classroom there is furniture that is appropriate, age-appropriate furniture for ECD. So yes, we are seeing that now ECD are being housed within the school, ECD-A and ECD-B, and they are allowed to be able to make their noise as they are learning and playing. And this recognition has made the parents to be able to value ECD, because when they were just going to play and there was no infrastructure, you find that there was no high rate of enrollment for ECD. But now, because this is structured, there is a curriculum, there are teachers who are trained, and they are within the school setup, and there is infrastructure, then there is serious learning which is happening. But yes, we are still seeing some gaps where there is not enough infrastructure for ECD. And a school, given a choice, they would give a grade 7 class a classroom, or a grade 6 class a classroom, and then probably squeeze ECD A and B in one classroom, or probably make another makeshift shelter where classrooms are not enough. But that deliberate stride by ministry is very is applauded, that they are making sure that at least ECD is housed within the school. And yes, there are schools where administration and school development committees are working very hard to ensure that there is housing, there is infrastructure for ECD. But we will get there. We're not there yet, but we are happy with the strides so far.
Amazing. I'll come to you, Taten. Rural areas. Yes. We have seen Paul and Daga classrooms and stuff. How does this lack of infrastructure affect the learning of the children, and how are you as partners trying to ensure that young people have a better space to learn, especially as we get into the rain season like this?
Oh, okay. As MDP, as I've said before, that we are more into influencing the prioritization of ECD by RDCs, rural district councils. So far, we are still in phase 1, which is almost coming to an end. We have recorded some positive success stories from the RDCs, whereby they are including ECD in their budgets. They are including ECD in their strategic plans. So, failing to plan is planning to fail. So by way of planning for these ECDs students, it's somehow a way of making sure that come what may, they are going to prioritize their needs. So, like I can take, for example, one of our districts is Muzarabani RDC. We actually went to a meeting whereby they had allocated a substantial amount of money towards the development of ECD through this project, because it's our mandate mainly, we are mainly focusing on the software approach, the change of attitudes, the change of behaviors, and for them just to prioritize. We have seen so many changes so far, because they have already put it in their budget, they have already included it in their strategic plans, even going on top in their district development plans. So far, we are anticipating that, of course, it's not a once-off thing whereby you just do an intervention and then you see the changes like today. It's a process, you know, influencing attitudes. They have already accepted it. So by way of including these ECDs in their plans, they are already in the process of doing something that if we are to monitor maybe a few months from now, since a few months from now will be already in 2022, it means maybe we are going to see more development happening, because they have already changed their mindsets. They are already prioritizing ECD, because the RDC is the planning authority. So by way of just including whatever they want to do in their districts in their plans, it means it's going to happen. And they are also the coordinating authority who also coordinates through the district development coordinators, which we are also working with. So by way of trying to mobilize resources from even other development partners which are not MDP or CAMFED or CPS or ZANU-PF, we are seeing a lot of things happening on the ground.
I was just fascinated when she was talking about the way the councils are coming in. And I thought probably we can, as also partners, talk about what is happening also at school level, where you find that the schools are, for us as CAMFED, and I know CPS did the same activity, where we did what we call a planning for school excellence, where we forced, for lack of a better word, communities to come together with us, with the school authorities, to look at what is missing for ECD at our schools. Is it the infrastructure? Is it learning materials? What don't we have? And are the learners transiting well? The enrollments, how are they like? Do children really like to come to school for ECD? And if not, what can be the causes? Do they have the furniture? Do they have the appropriate toilets and all that? And so for us, we call it for planning for school excellence, which brings the parents, the children, the learners themselves, and they talk about what they would want to see in an ECD, small as they are. We value their voices too. So that made schools to come up with school action plans to say, yes, if we don't have an ECD classroom, we will need to prioritize that. If we don't have appropriate furniture, we need to, if it's teachers that we don't have at the school, how do we make sure that we have good teachers for the teacher people ratio that she was talking about? So with support from Roger Federal Foundation, we gave them an income generating grant for them to be able to say, yes, we've got this shopping basket, we need a classroom, we need appropriate toilets, we need learning materials, we need teachers. So how do we mobilize the resources? So that was just a small amount of money to bring them together, to open their eyes and widen their horizons, and thinking in terms of how else they can be able to mobilize resources to cater or to be able to really get into action, their action plans, and meet their plans that they would have planned together as parents and teachers and learners. So this was done. This is where we are seeing some construction now going on from the resources that they are getting, the profits from the income generating activities. Some are doing poultry, some are doing goat keeping, pig keeping, and all that, to be able to really build an income for the school to support their SRI, school readiness initiative plans. So that's what we did in support to the communities, and we are seeing that they are now building, they are renovating, they are building outdoor play centers, they are really planning around buying learning materials and some even went further with committees to employ teachers to come in and so that they reduce the teacher pupil ratio and have learners not squat or in one room, but really having enough teachers for learning to happen. So alongside what is in MDP is doing with council, we are doing the same, but this time with the schools, with the communities, where we believe if they know that these are our challenges in ECD, we want them to own the challenges and to come up with their own solutions, to say these are our challenges, our children, and our solutions.
Indeed, so our children, yeah. But I want to come to you, Natalie, and say, probably our president in the country never went to ECD, but he is the president. I probably also didn't go to ECD, but I'm sitting here. Why should people care about ECD? You've got CEOs who run banks who never went past ECD. I see you do impact and assessment. So impact me.
Well, what I can say as a response to that is that then we can have better quality leaders when we have better quality ECD. Where the thing with, there's a longitudinal study that was done that showed that children who go through ECD have more positive outcomes in terms of even things such as child marriages, teenage pregnancies, and as well as their career moves down the line. So we're saying that we have this quality of education based on what we had. What more when we have quality ECD? And that's my response to that. It really sets up our children, by the time they're in grade 1, they now have some fine motor skills, they now have cognitive skills. And when it comes to that, then it means that they are grasping the concepts more. Also, to add on to that, we are talking about competence-based learning, we're talking about color. And the way that we do that is by seeing how best can we cultivate the best out of our children. And with that, as you are saying, structured play, learning through play, not just out there doing what they're doing, but when you're playing this game, what are you learning? What am I assessing out of this child? And when I meet with their caregiver, what am I saying back to the caregiver to do more with them so that they cultivate that at home? So for me, I think that is the thrust of what we're doing. We're trying to also be relevant and competitive on the international market. We are becoming one global world. So we need to make sure that our children are competitive when it comes to globalization.
What do you think is missing, Natalie? What do you think is missing for us to have that quality that you're talking about? Because you zero in on the issue of quality.
Right, so it speaks also to the objectives of the SRI. The first being, we've been talking a lot about it, the joint responsibility. Everyone needs to be looking and prioritizing and seeing what they can do to finance, resource, and focus on ECD. So what is the school doing to finance the school development plans that they have done? What is the RDC doing to strengthen the schools that they are supporting? This 95% of schools, and by the way, rural is what percentage of people here in Zimbabwe? So already we're just talking about prioritizing the majority of the people that live in this country. And then on the second bit, we're talking about how are we strengthening the capacity of our teachers to teach ECD. So we have a component in our project that we call the Stella, which is a child monitoring tool that looks at each and every child in each of the milestones. How is this child doing in this particular category, in category B, category C? What can I do as a teacher to get them to move forward? What can how can I rope in the caregiver to teach this child so that they get to the point where we're saying they are ready for school? Our policy says that children will automatically transition, but we are now wanting to say automatically but ready. So that is the other component which we're working. And they're also roping in the caregivers to say, we talked about infrastructure. There's the part of the classroom, but we're talking about learning through play. Our outdoor play centers, what are they looking like? Do they have structures out there that children can play on, and we can then see the motor skills happening, the social skills happening? So we work with the ECD teachers for them to mobilize the ECD caregivers within the communities that they serve, so that they come through to bring the skills from the community into the school. So they produce toys for the children, they produce play equipment outside, that is Nolo. They do the climbing, what do they call those things? The ones that they climb on, up and down, the swings. And the idea being that you're bringing the community to build the school, and then they also have a stake in what happens at the end of the day. And it's also a continuity thing. When ECDB class from 2021 graduates to grade 1, next year we have a new incumbent coming in, and what can the new things that those new parents can do? So that's how we are contributing towards enriching the quality of ECD in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, you spoke about staying in class, about going through, keeping the net tighter so that we have everyone. Now, in the rural areas, as you push for prioritization, is this a key issue for you? And how is the dropout rate if you're looking at it?
Okay, as I said before, that for us as MDP, we mainly focus on the rural district council's function. So our other partners, because we are on the local government level, then our other partners go directly into the schools. They are the ones like CPS and Comfort. They are the ones who go deeper into checking the numbers, as in the enrollments and the dropouts. So at RDC level, I might not be in a position to talk about numbers, but I might be in a position to talk about the plans. What are they doing at the RDC level?
Yes.
What have they done?
Yeah.
What have they achieved?
Yeah. What are the plans there to ensure that they keep everyone in school?
Okay.
Yeah, because some, like for ECD, some have to travel a bit of long distances. This could actually affect some kids staying in school, is it not?
Yes, true that. So we at RDC level, since they are the planning authorities and they are also there to monitor this ECD, they have established they have supported what we call the satellite schools, whereby sometimes you find the big school at about maybe a certain location, then they also allow that in that area there is no big school close by. So they allow for just a small number of kids to be taught there, and then they will be feeding into the bigger school. So since the local authority is there to ensure that there is a conducive environment for the development of these ECDs, they are there to maybe approve. They are there to approve if a councillor comes with a notion that these students are traveling long distances, can we establish a school in between? Then it's the council's business to make sure that are they meeting the standards for approval? If yes, then they approve. If not, they say no. For this one, we have to maybe put it on standby or maybe look for another location. So they are trying to, in as much as they are schools, they are also trying to make sure that they are within the reach of students. Since we are talking of ECD, A and Bs, these are very young kids. So they are actually promoting and trying to ensure that they support these satellite schools.
Yeah, I'll come to you, Zinekta, and say, what are the challenges, the difference of the challenges between rural ECD learners and urban ECD learners, and what can be done to bring this together so that we do not have others who are more advantaged while those others are really disadvantaged?
It's interesting that as we speak of our social settings, we normally speak about the rural and the urban differences and how then it impacts the child's growth in terms of resourcing, in terms of how even the individual within the microenvironment, the parent themselves, what's their social status and how well are they able to support the child's learning needs or developmental needs that then speak to the learning needs. But then for me, there's a growing trend which I've noticed in terms of urban, if I can call it urban swala, or urban slums, or the in-between, the group of the in-between who are coming to closer to urban areas where there are resources, where there are employment opportunities, so to say, and some of the challenges in which they are facing in terms of, because this is an informal setting, there are no schools, and within the urban local council, there is no plan to, they were not supposed to be there in the first place, so there are no plans to have a school in that area. And in so many situations, the family, the parents are struggling themselves. So you actually see a difference between those three settings for those children. I've added the one in between, not the rural, not the urban, the one was in between. So we actually have now almost three situations. So you'll notice even with the discussion that you're having with Tatenda in terms of enrollment, which is a very big issue when it comes to early childhood development, net enrollment. Children who are within the correct age for ECD, it's supposed to be 4 and 5 years, then they graduate into grade 1 at 6 years. But you notice that for our statistics are saying, even as we speak of the statistics were appalling before COVID, pre-COVID. Right now, when you look at the statistics in terms of what the MOBS has released, our numbers have actually gone down. We are around 35% of enrollment, which is the correct age. So when we're talking about those kind of challenges, we'll see that if a child is to enroll in school when they are 8 to start ECD, those are challenges coming up in future years, because some research will tell you that numeracy and literacy skills are better acquired before a child turns 10.
Is that so?
Yeah. 1. 2, what are the chances that if we are looking at even social settings, even bullying within the school, a child is bigger than the rest of the group, how will they fit when they are now coming of age at puberty, grade 6, grade 7? So you notice that in retaining children within schools, our government has made headway in terms of policy provisions that ensure that children remain within the school. So one key policy that they've put in place is not to dismiss a child when fees is not paid, which is a very good provision from my perspective, because it keeps those marginalized children, those children that are coming from disadvantaged homes, to stay within the school. And also even within that ECD framework, you'll see programs like the school feeding programs, which have provided for meals, hot meals within the school system. So children that are disadvantaged can look forward to having a hot meal at school, something that can attract them, like Natalie was saying, and also Sinikio to say we have to find out the reasons why ECD children are not enjoying to come to school. So those are some of the programs that the government has thought around, and also provided grain and other resources to see how can we help ECD to progress.
Yeah, Sinikio, I want to. These challenges, for that that are being raised. West, when you're a girl, Comfort, you look specifically into young girls. Talk to us about the differences of the challenges and why you have decided to look at the young girls.
So I think I was speaking to your question, because she was talking about the challenges between rural and urban. I was almost like feeling hot in my chair, because I was looking at the things that she's looking at macro level, but you find that what we are made us as Comfort to really be able to look at the young children is really knowing that there are some differences there. Yes, where you come from or where you live has got a bearing in terms of what you achieve in the end. Debatable, I know, but you see that the marginalized communities we're working as an organization, that's where teachers, they don't really want to go and teach. they would rather be in an urban setup. So when they are deployed to those marginalized communities, they can they can stay there for a year, but they are on one foot, you understand, one leg. They are just waiting for an opportunity to transfer and to get into urban areas. So now, as you see that the percentages that we have of trained ECD teachers is very low, currently it's very low. So there is really a clamoring for ECD teachers. So they know that they are on demand. They can be able to apply for a transfer and go to an urban setup. And then you see that in those rural communities, the marginalized communities, they will end up being taught by the untrained ladies. I wanted to put old, but then I removed it. And I say untrained ladies who end up taking these classes because they are entertaining the children, they are playing with the children. Is their way it may be for a teacher who might want to stay within the rural marginalized community. So I want to applaud probably the stance which the government has taken so far to the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, where they are saying they would value a teacher who is from that community. If it's in the Ndebele community, they would want the Ndebele teachers to really be trained and go back to their communities and serve their communities. If it's a Tonga community, let someone who is Tonga be able to be deployed in a Tonga community. They will be able to stay because that's where they are coming from. So as an organization, Comfort, what we have done is with our alumni, we call them Comfort Association members, those that have been supported through school by Comfort. What we have tried to do is, because they are coming from those communities, we have deliberately gone to support them to be able to be trained as ECD teachers, because they have vowed to go back and serve within their communities. So yes, it's not a big number that we've supported to date, but what we have noted is when they get deployed in their communities where they're coming from, they tend to stay. They tend to give back fully and with passion, because they've lived those challenges, and they would not want any other child to suffer the same way that they've done. So they would give their all to make sure that ECD learners or girls within those communities, they've got role models. They've got something to emulate, because they are going back to their communities to serve, whether is Ministry of Education employees or even as volunteers, just going back to their schools to deliver life skills education, life skills sessions to these young children, to these girls, so that they can be able to say, there is life after all outside this community. You can be able to be better. You can have your own vision which you can be able to achieve through correct role modeling of people whom they can identify with, because they are coming from their communities. So it's not only about teachers, it's even about resources, where you find in urban schools, the parents are able to pay. They can do the levies and pay on time. But in the rural community, the old lady will bring a bucket of maize because they cannot afford to pay the fees. So you see that for lack of a better word, the discrepancies, the resources are not at par, which will in the end make lead to those girls, those youngsters in the marginalized communities not to be able to have the same quality learning that would make them be able to help point move from one level to the other and really succeed in learning. So those are some of the discrepancies, those are some of the differences between urban and rural. The learning infrastructure, the learning materials, the infrastructure is not there. And of course, the long distances to school, which end up having some communities now, there's a mushrooming of community centers where they are learning under a tree, and when it's raining and it's cold, they don't go to school because they don't have the appropriate shelter, because the small ones are having to walk long distance to school. Yes, to a point, the district councils, who are the responsible authorities, are doing much, and even through the ministry, the satellite school that she was talking about. But some of the distances in the marginalized communities an ECD child will end up walking 6 kilometers, but ministry talks about 5. But they walk long distances, and the parent will say, stay at school till you are 8 years, 7 years, and you're able to walk to go to school. So those are some of the differences and challenges, which made us as an organization to say, let's focus on the marginalized communities. Let's focus on the marginalized children and be able to bring them at par with the urban communities. We can't meet that level, but the communities are now striving hard to make sure that they do something. She was talking about the kiosk, the Stella, that we are doing with RIFF. We are talking about let's make sure that the quality learning really takes place and there is assessment of that learning. So the rural teachers were given tablets where they are doing their assessment using a tablet. And I'll tell you, there was excitement within this ECD rural teachers where they are saying, now we've brought us at least on the same level with the urban teacher. We are assessing with the tablet, and the urban teacher is still using manual. We are going to give us an opportunity to go into the urban ECDs and train them also from a rural setup that you can be able to do assessments using a tablet. So these are some of the strides which are in place to make sure that we are not forgetting the duty bearer. Who is the rural teacher? Let's make sure that they are comfortable, they have got the tools that they require so that they can be able to give their best in terms of prioritization of ECD. So those are some of the things that we are doing.
Yeah. So
to at least bridge that divide, which is behind.
Yeah. As we speak about bridging the divide, Natalie, COVID-19 brought a rude awakening, which actually then erased some of these efforts. Now let's talk about that. How much of an effect has COVID-19 exposed the gap?
Thank you for bringing that up. I was actually thinking about it when we were talking about differences between urban and rural. And some of the efforts that ministry had were of having online learning material that learners could access from ECD all the way up to secondary school. And these were really good initiatives of trying to say, how can we continue learning but using remote options, since we had lockdown scenarios and so on. And you'll find that for the rural areas, there were challenges, even with the radio stations. There are areas where they wouldn't even have either the reception, or they don't have the radios, or they don't have the electricity. So already we're seeing all of these barriers that are happening. As well as there was the Roosevelt platform. It had a lot of content, really good learning aids that were on there. But you'll find the challenge of data, of having smartphones to access, as well as some of the learners that we're talking about, their own caregivers also probably have challenges with technology. They also have limited learning. So we do recognize that there were some of those challenges. And the ways in which we've tried to bridge this gap was to bring through what we're calling the Bridge to School, where we have material from the Stella, which is a smart tablet early learning assessment, as well as the teacher's curriculum as well. And we're saying, how can we bridge this together to put it into a package that learners can learn from at home, administered by their caregivers. So we're trying to just find some solutions that would work within the context of a rural setting where virtual options may not be as viable as they are in urban settings.
So let's talk about these virtual options. Did they even really work in the rural setting? And the third option that she also brought in, the quasi, the peri-urban rather, did this work? Because from my assessment as a journalist, they're even failing to work in the urban areas.
I think the thing with COVID was that it was a learning curve for everyone. It was a brand new thing that nobody was a master of. I'm not sure even if first world countries were able to come out with an A+ on that one. But what I can say is that we did have teachers even who showed passion, who would even go into the communities, just to have a collective of small groups that they would give guides on what to do at home. And this was a way of them just trying to be innovative. I think what we learned from the pandemic point was that we had to go. You had to test it and try it. There was no room to really say, this is the thing that works, this is the model, and then do it. Where we could do radio sessions, that was rolled out by the ministry. Where online learning materials could be done, that was done. Where materials could be collected at the school by the caregivers from the teacher, and they would go with a learning pack home, that was done. So I think it was different solutions that were all trying to measure the same goal, but we were still a long way to then say this is what works and it universally works for all settings. I don't think we have that solution yet.
Thank you very much. We'll just be back in a just for a commercial break, but we'll come back and give you some of the recommendations that we can have to improve ECD as we close off this program.
Vana vasuwana zvakakwana because sometimes vanhu vanonzi munobhadhara inonzi US but isusu muZimbabwe tiri kuwana RTGS and then kudzinga vana futi kana vana vasina fees vanodzinga vana.
Dzidzo yavana in particular kubva kuECD inobva yaleka nokuda kwokuti mateachers ane complain ndo varairidzi vanoswera navana. So effort yavanoaplya manje haisisina kukwana zvakanyanya, saka benefit pani yevana yava low, iri below average by far ipapapo. Why? Because motivation kuna teacher inomupa simba kuti adzidzise inobva mukuti ari kuwaneiwo semunhu ari kurarama, muberekiwo zvakare anoendesa vana vake kuchikoro. So in that same vein, we will actually notice that the teacher is not happy. The teacher is not happy. Vana ve-ECD panoitwa ngano kufara kuimba kuita say, oh, that is about motivating, creating conducive environment for learning. But now, because of the situation, yatataura yekuti maticha singaendi kuchikoro noda kwe-COVID-19 from April up to from May, June there up to September. Saka vana vanga vava kutodevelopa kahabit kekusadzidza. So now pata open nama schools pane challenge futi zvakare yekuti mari yavari kutambira haina kunyatsokuafadza zvakanaka.
Yeah, but in most cases value yevana kuti ioneke nowadays you have to pay. Like my teachers achona, you see kuti even starting from ECD anenge akutodedzera kutoti toda kuvaitisa ma-extra lessons, and kana uri mubereki wekuti hauna mari yakawanda yekuti unokwanisa kubhadhara kuti mwana wako abatsirwe, mwana wako apiwe value. Even muclass machona anenge achingosiyiwa, anongoregerwa, anenge achingoita zvaari kuitawo rega. So in most cases mari ndo yakushanda. Saka kuti hurumende itibatsire pa because zvibatsire, because vamwe mafamilies hatisi tese tinowana, vamwe havana mari dzacho. So you find out kuti munhu yeye kuti mwana wake awane assistance, awane kubatsirwa, it takes time. And mwana anozotosvika pakuti especially ECD akasapuwa attention iri serious, nepamosanga kuona kuti mwana in terms of academics zvakuita kunge zviri kudzikira, kunge asiri kunzwisa, kunge asingagone. It's all because haana attention yaari kuwana muclass. It's all because my parents they are not affording zviri kudiwa na teacher wacho. So my teachers anenge achida kubhadharo, anenge achida kupuwa mari, of which mamwe maparents anenge achigara panhu pekuti vana vacho vanorarama nekuvatengera kana kutengesa mafriziti, kutengesa zvinhu zvidiki-diki, maminsi. So munhu yeye kuti azokwanisa kuwana 20 US rudiwa na teacher we-ECD kuti mwana wake abatsirwe, anongoti ndozvozviotira ndega, of which anenge asina skill. Saka mwana hawani help. Ndo kazhinji zviri kukonzeresa.
Panhau ye-ECD, isusu edu pa-ECD zviri kutirwadza. Chipo chekuti tiri kubhadhara fees katatu patemu. Tinonzi tibhadhare fees yekuchikoro ante. Tobva tanzibhadharai ma10 US ema online lessons. Mwana ari ECD anogonza abhadhare mari online lessons. Chii chaanoziva panhau dzemafoni idzi. Ipapo zvinhu zviri kutotinetsa. Koti mari dzemaeke tinonzi bhadhare ma15 US pamwedzi yekuti mwana anga achidzidza. Tabhadhara fees kudaro mwana muklasi haasi kudzidza. mwana anogonzi ngabhadhare online, akasata kubhadhara online nyangwe bhuku tichahatombotarisi bhuku remwana ari makwe ariite sei zvese rinongodzoka rakadaro ende haana chaanouya nacho kuti kana tizive kuchikoro kwacho vari kudzidzei hatichaziva kuti mari dzatiri kubhadhara mafisi ndedzei. Ipapo government dai yapindira yatibatsirawo, isusu tiri kutorwadziwa tobhadhara mari yakawandisa because ndikatarisa kuti $15 i45 years pamwedzi patemu, uku ndabhadhara fisi pamwe ndanzi 4,000 kana 5,000 yefisi. Saka zvinhu zviri kutirwadza pama ECD papo kadai vatombotibatsira because hapana kana vana vedu hapana kana chavari kutomboziva, hapana kana chavari kutomboita muzvikoro, zvinhu zviri kutirwadza.
Ndingatangira pakuti value yevana vema-ECD hongu tiri kuiona asi haina kudzamisisa zvatiri kutarisira nezvatiri kufungira chaizvo, nokuti zvakakosha kuti vana vechidiki vaende kuchikoro ve-ECD, nokuti pazera ravo ipapapo ndopavane vachakavhurika njere, vanokwanisawo kubata nokudzidza zvavanodzidziswa. Asi kuti dambudziko ratinaro mazuva ano nderekuti varayiridzi vedu havasi kuzvipira, havana kuzvipira kwakakura kuti vakwanise kusimudzira vana neishu yekuti vanhu vari kuchema nyaya dzemasalaries. Saka naizvozvo vari kungonotiwo vana vachienda kuzvikoro paya, vana vanongonosvikongonopuwa zvekutambisa, vana vanosvikongonovata vasina kuridziro yakasimba yavari kuita. Saka naizvozvo isu tanga tichikumbira kuti ivo varayiridzi vanyatsocherechedza pazera revana uye nechimiro chenyika yedu kuti isu hatingarwisi kana kusasimudzira vana, nokuti tiri kudzosera vana vedu sure. Tiri kuda kuti vana vedu vasimukirewo vagwawo neramangwana rakajeka.
Welcome back to this edition of The Situation right now, where we are looking at our kids. Are they ready for school? Are they prepared? We have seen COVID coming in as a disruptor in schools. The allocation of resources has been topical as we are having this discussion. But I want to just turn back to Zinekta and say, what are our lessons from COVID-19, especially as we look at the young kids whose wearing of masks is alien to them? These young kids are not being vaccinated, so we're not so sure whether they're safe or not. What are the lessons that we have so that we keep them in school?
So for me, Natalie captured it very well to say that there is no one size fits all when it came to how we responded to COVID-19. And you see even in the interventions that were being made even from the macro level, from the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education and other line ministries. Then you come down to the CSOs. The CSOs specifically looked into the districts that they were working in and tried to do rapid studies to find out what are the challenges within this area, how can we intervene in a way that that is appropriate to the challenges that our learners are facing right now. So it was a moment of learning for all of us. We're still learning. And one important thing where I think we should all be jointly responsible is to capture those lessons and to put them into research papers where we can refer to. Because even when you look at COVID-19, we have had pockets of challenges that are almost similar to the challenge of COVID-19. Not necessarily, but you could look into issues like Cyclone Idai, how those communities were affected. And even right now, when you look at the global discourse where there are discussions to say we might have more challenges that are bigger than COVID-19, more challenges that will force us to go into isolation. What are the modes of alternative learning that we have? So for ECD, the key lesson was a realization for us to say, even when we are still doing mainstream learning, it wasn't enough to focus on school-based learning only. So for example, when it comes to the ZNEGDA work, there was conversation around how our community, our school feeding program within the policy, the school health policy, was only providing for school-based meals. And our question was to say, within that policy, there was room and there is still room for us to speak about community-based feeding coming from our line ministries to answer to those kind of challenges, even now that we are even talking about some of the children that are still outside the school system. How are we catering to their developmental needs in terms of nutrition and diet? So those were some of the lessons that got us reflecting even in our policies, that got us reflecting even in our intervention strategies as single NGOs, single civil society organization, to see how can we better plan our intervention strategies to answer to maybe problems that will come in the future. And also right now as we speak to responding to the needs of learners right now as they go back to school in the time that they have lost, the reversal of the progress that we have made. How do we do it in a concise manner that makes sure that we don't lose out a whole generation?
Amazing. I'll come to you, Tatenda, and say, as we close, maybe your parting shots, what you would want to see happen in rural councils, what would make the major difference apart from what is already happening?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dara, for that question. As was said by Natalie before, that one of our major objectives is that of joint responsibility. And we are also making sure that, of course, we have a certain number of rural district councils we are dealing with right now. In fact, we were dealing with in phase 1. So we are anticipating that all that we have taught the RDCs, they can be in a position to share with other councils. We have some of our RDCs, as I can point out, for example, Buhera RDC, whereby we are actually connecting them with other rural district councils, and they are copying from them because they have been implementing this well and trying to make sure that whatever they are taught, they modify it into something even bigger than what we have shared with them. So besides what we have taught them, we are just anticipating that even when this project comes to an end, projects, they sometimes they have to be phased out after maybe a certain period of time. We are anticipating that the efforts we have put on place, they are sustainable enough to make sure that even when we are no longer there, they continue with the initiative. They continue sharing even with other districts which are not part of this phase.
So you're talking about phase 1. Do we have phase 2?
Yes, we are looking forward to it. We are actually planning on that.
Yeah, but will you just let us in as to what you want to push for in phase 2?
Okay, on phase 2, like we have said, especially that the other part of the project was affected by COVID-19. For us, we are a bit fortunate enough because we mainly deal with social services officers in rural district councils, which are part of essential services providers. So they were there on the ground, even with COVID-19. So we have learned a lot. This project, as we have said before, that it was a learning by doing project, since this was the startup phase. So we have learned maybe also learning from the districts, whereby you teach them something, then they develop it into something bigger, and we are looking forward to that, and also imparting all the lessons we have learned from phase 1 as we are going into phase 2 of the project.
Thank you. I want to take advantage of you at this particular moment, just for us to talk a bit about the young child who died while he's giving birth, and say, how does our education sector effectively deal with this, ensure that it doesn't happen? The use of soft power, because the hard power is going there and say, we will arrest you, we'll put you in prison, but that's very expensive to maintain. How do we use education as soft power?
What I would say is it's unfortunate that things like that end up happening, that a child dies whilst giving birth. It speaks to some missing links within the protection that we should put around the child. That when we think deeply about child protection and we look at what can cause a child to get into such a situation, and we do awarenesses around that, it can go a long way in preventing such things from happening. I would say off the cuff that I believe in the power that lies within our communities. The law, yes, is there to come and probably punish a perpetrator. But we don't want to come to that point. It's something that is far-fetched. We need to make sure that the power that lies within our communities is activated, because that's where the protection of learners is coming from. That's where we find that there is traditional leadership within communities. There are parents and guardians within communities. They are the custodians of what we hold dear as a nation in terms of the principles that govern us as humans. So when we activate the strength that lies within our communities, we will see that at community level, they can be able to protect their own. We need to make sure that we give the right authority or the right awarenesses within our community, so that they can be able to rally behind the protection not only of their own children but of the children that are within their own communities. So the community can become the I and the E, and they can also become the protectors of their own children. Like when you were talking about what we've learned, and they've given you what we've learned with this project. For me, I would say as an organization also as Comfort, we learned that the community, even the parents, the grandmothers who we believe are not as learned as we want them to be, they have got a wealth of experience and a wealth of know-how that can be protective enough to our own children. Natalie was talking about the lack of electricity and learning materials. We tried with Roger Federal Foundation to really tap into the know-how and expertise that lies within communities, where they brought as a sample learning cards that we tested with old women, with community mothers, grandmothers, to be able to do games that are within the ECD curriculum, but at household level with children. And children were learning, and the grandmothers did not know that they had become teachers of their own grandchildren, using very simple cards, learning cards that they were using with learners. So we can be able to activate that within our community so that they can protect our children, they can protect their girls within the community. To say, if you see something happening to a girl, they should empower these girls to speak out, to say, this has happened to me. Someone is touching where they're not supposed to touch. This awareness, if it's given to the children, and they speak out freely within our communities, to mothers, to guardians, we also have got as an organization what we call the Comfort Association members, who are foot soldiers within communities, who look out to such issues of child abuse, and they refer those cases, they cry out, they whistle blow, so that support and help comes timelessly to a girl child within communities, so that we avoid such things like a girl has died giving birth. So sexual reproductive health education should really be given to girls, to boys within communities. It's a very tender age, as per their age group. Give them what is relevant to them, so that we are empowering each and every girl child to be able to take care of themselves and to protect themselves, as well as the community to become a cycle of protection around the girls.
As you speak about that, to my mind, I remember this video of a policewoman was saying, Papa Kwap, don't touch, don't touch, you know. And as you speak about it, in my mind, I just visualize the effect of learning and playing but when you look at it, you think it's taboo. But I also just want to come to you as we close and say, from here, where to?
Okay, so I think for us the biggest take-homes where we talked a lot about the Stella, which we're saying is the smart tablet early learning assessment. We want to have enough data around this to see how it works within the districts that we're working with the ministry, and for us to see the evidence of it working and how it can be scaled up. So for us going forward, that's one of the key areas that we're excited about. That's also aligning to the ministry's goal of embracing ICTs and seeing how we can use these virtual platforms to improve the quality of education delivery. We did talk about how we now know that there's such a thing as an entire country staying in their homes. What can we do then in the meantime to make sure that we are creating those models, and when those events happen, our systems are in place. So that's one of the key areas that we are excited about when it comes to where do we go now. As well as then also expanding some of the lessons that we've learned. I think my colleagues have talked about it, that we want to take the lessons that we've learned of engaging the caregivers, improving in and outdoor play centers for ECD, and seeing how we can also scale that up into new districts that were not previously touched by the school readiness initiative. And I think on a last point, we're looking forward to having more engagement, even as well with local government. We talked about the issue of infrastructure. We are knowing now that within our policy there is provisions for local government to allocate land for our schools to expand infrastructure. For example, in Zimbabwe, we're working with farming schools. They want to expand, but they need more areas to be pegged for them to expand into. So those are some of the things that we're looking forward to, the implementation of the advocacy issues that we have been seeing in the SADC phase.
Now, so every time Roger Federer hits the ball, every time he earns some money, he's plowing that money to ensure that there is education for some underprivileged young child out there. Could be your child, could be mine. The Roger Federer Foundation, this program is brought to you as part of that initiative to see that young children are ready for school. And I was joined by partners who are implementing this project. Comfort, Zinecta, MDP. Yeah, it sounds more like a political party. But amazing you working with the Child Protection Service. But you are the impact and assessment programs officer. Now, this was the situation right now. Now, I know for some of you watching this, you do not understand the challenges that young people face, but I do. At some point, I walked around 12 kilometers to get to school, barefooted. The rains would wet me and I would dry in class. Sitting on the floor without a desk. Just because you want that education that will set you free, that will open the doors to get you to where I'm sitting today, or even better. Let us give these children, let us give our children a fighting chance for a better future, for success. Thank you very much for joining the situation right now. And I'm your host, Dara Blessed Mhlanga, on Heart and Soul TV and radio. Until next time, good afternoon.